As stated in an article by Luke Manduit, posted in the Educational Action Research Journal, the practice of collecting feedback from students is well established at the university level, with student feedback used to give information to teachers on their instructional practices and as part of performance appraisal. For the purposes of today's video, we will focus more on the former, that is, using student feedback to improve teaching strategies and course design. To begin, we will consider various methods of collecting student feedback, and then we will shift our attention to best practices in implementing student feedback to improve the student experience in your course. Dr. Peter Selden, a distinguished professor at James Madison University, once said of feedback that, just as students need feedback and guidance to correct errors, faculty members require feedback and helpful direction if they are to improve their own performance. Dr. Selden spoke about the value of using multiple sources of information, including student feedback, to improve teaching, but observed that student feedback is often the only source of information most instructors receive as it pertains to their teaching effectiveness. Still, student feedback can be immensely valuable if structured effectively. While understanding that a multiplicity of feedback sources is ideal, let's consider student feedback in a vacuum. Dr. Selden recommends providing students opportunities to answer open-ended questions that give students room to elaborate on their experiences and to speak to things you may not have considered in setting up a student feedback survey. Conversely, student feedback surveys should also include diagnostic questions that relate to specific and observable teaching behaviors. Such diagnostic questions could include asking students, did the instructor use frequent examples during class? Were students addressed by name? Were assigned readings sufficient or too difficult? Furthermore, so that students can answer questions with specificity, questions should be presented on a scale rather than calling for a simple yes or no response. You're likely thinking to yourself, we already do this at OUWB through course evaluations, which is indeed true. What is less frequent, however, are complementary forms of student feedback to buttress such summative assessments. Dr. Selden discusses additional ways of obtaining student feedback, including interviews, student evaluation committees, quality control circles, small group instructional diagnosis, and student visitor programs. He also encourages faculty to seek third-party insights, particularly with regards to student comments on open-ended questions. To that end, I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to remind OUWB faculty of a few instructional design services available to receive just such insights, namely course evaluation review and individual consultations. You can find the links in the video description that provide more information about these services and how to request such support for your course or sessions. Even with third-party support and guidance, student feedback can be overwhelming when you first review it. Fortunately, there are a few simple things you can do to effectively digest, learn from, and implement student feedback to improve your teaching year over year. First, I recommend theming or categorizing your students' open-ended responses. This can be a time-consuming process, but one that is worthwhile. By categorizing student responses, you get a better sense of what are common student sentiments and which comments are more isolated. Once you know what the big themes are, you can proceed to the next step, prioritizing your changes. During prioritization, identify one or two themes from your students' comments that you feel you have the agency to change in your course or lecture. Brainstorm potential changes to address student feedback and consider discussing such changes with your students to gain additional insight about how feasible such changes might be. Once you have identified the changes you will make, commit to making those changes. Come up with an action plan to implement your changes and update your evaluation form to give students an opportunity to provide feedback about how such changes impacted their learning experience. In this way, you have completed the feedback loop and can continue assessing, theming, brainstorming, and implementing changes to your course. To conclude, student feedback is a valuable component of the learning process. Evidence supports that student feedback is both reliable and valid with regards to the improvement of teaching. Furthermore, evidence indicates that the likelihood of improvement increases when instructors engage in consultation when interpreting student feedback, discussing specific teaching behaviors that can be changed, and strategies for making such changes.